I'm not going to say that a life insurance policy gets you 7, 8, 9, 10% because it doesn't in the internal rate of return.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at all the other benefits, you really have to earn about 9 to 11% every single year to just compare to all the benefits that life insurance is giving you, not just now, but in the future.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
All right, man. So I've been wanting to talk more about like investments, tax strategy, and stuff like that on the Franchise Secrets podcast. And like Justin Donald is like one of my go-tos, and I've been excited to have you on to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. We're both in Austin. We're at a conference, and we're jamming about all things insurance, taxes, investing, and it's always an honor to chat with you, man.
And you just got beat pretty bad and on the pickleball court too. That was fun too.
I'm pretty sure you lost the most. If we're actually being honest.
All I know is...
And the times that I lost were actually with you, which is very interesting. There's a common denominator in this whole thing, but yeah.
Do you remember what you were saying as you were walking up to like paddles?
The last game was on me, 100%. It was on me. But we played for over 3 hours.
I know. You're the best player that hardly ever plays. I'll say that.
Okay, thank you.
So what do you do? Tell people what you do.
So my story in a nutshell, because people a lot of times are like, okay, why would I even listen to you about money? So I grew up in Wisconsin. I got a job at a bank at 17. At 19 years old, I actually took over the bank's investment department. So I was doing everything from marketing to loans to working in our investment department. The person that was running our investment department left. And a 19-year-old Caleb, who looked like he was 13, took over a bank's investment department. And that's why you should never trust banks with your money, by the way. And through that time, I made like this commitment to myself that I was going to do everything that I possibly could to help people when it comes to their money. I believe that people have so much God-given potential, and a lot of them are not utilizing it. I'm not going to say the money's the only reason, but they're not utilizing it, and they have so much scarcity as it relates to how they view money. And so I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And through that, I just started asking people, like, can you help me? I'm obsessed with efficiency, and efficiency, you need two things to be efficient. You need to know where you want to go, and you need to remove friction. So know where you want to go, remove friction, and there's a lot of financial friction out there. So I'm learning all about taxes, investing, insurance, and believe it or not, I went from like thinking insurance was the worst place to put your money, like permanent insurance, to being like a huge believer in when structured and utilized properly, life insurance. Yes, life insurance can be an amazing place to store, use, protect, grow your wealth. And so that became like a focus of mine. And then at 21, I left the bank to start BetterWealth. And that was one of the main things that we focused on is how do we set up insurance, not as an investment, not as like a insurance policy that you may think of like protecting your family, but as a place to store, protect, grow, and use your money in a very tax advantage way. And that's took off, I would say, and self-published a book called The And Asset. And between the book, between the podcast, between our YouTube channel, we've been growing, and now we have clients in all 50 states. And I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee. So once I made enough money to get out of Wisconsin, I realized that life is too short to be freezing for a couple of months out of the year. You have not gotten that hint yet, but overall, like that's what we're all about. And at BetterWealth, we do lots of different things. Insurance is one of the things that we're most known for, but our bigger purpose as a company is to make intentional living the wealth standard. And so we want people to not assume that they're wealthy because they have money in a bank account or they have cash flow or they have a successful franchise. We want to challenge you that you're not wealthy unless you're living intentionally. But the exact opposite can be true. You don't have to have $1 million to become wealthy. You can be wealthy if you're living that intentional life. And I hope that money can be a tool to help you better be able to do that in every area of your life.
So how did you really learn what you know now? Because were you like self-taught at the bank? Did you have some key mentors? Where did you learn?
Great question. So I'm dyslexic. One of my favorite quotes is the solutions that you find to your weaknesses growing up become your greatest strength. So I am not going to learn by reading a book. But what I had to do to overcompensate for my weakness, which became a strength, is finding the person that knew what they were talking about. So an example, like in college, I would always look for the girls in the front row that were taking really nice notes. And voila, I asked to study with them and I got a way greater result than the hockey players in the back. Okay. So that's an example of who, not how. And so I've just taken that approach to everything. So like when it comes to insurance, I started learning some provocative things about like, could insurance, like I thought it was a scam. If it's not a scam, who do I need to learn from? And like, what do they know that I don't? And so what I did was I just started calling every author that wrote a book on insurance, and I would look at anyone that made like spoke or did videos. I would find a way to reach out to them. I think they pitied me because they're like, this kid has some potential, I think, and so we're going to help him out. And then through that process, I just started like learning from people, inviting myself over to their homes and shadowing, and I started learning a process. I'm very framework driven, and like my framework is pretty simple. It's like, you exist, you have some desires. Let's get really clear on what you actually want. Most people in America don't actually know that. So we don't even need to talk about insurance or money or anything. We just need to get clear about what you actually want out of your life. But then once you figure out that, then it's like, okay, how do you make money? So like, you are your greatest asset. Let's actually make money. Once you have money, your money can really only do two things. It can be saved or it can be consumed. Consumption, it could be taxes, lifestyle, debt. We could have conversations about paying less in taxes, maybe spending less money. But then money that you save is a verb. We're saving it. We're preserving it for a reason, hopefully to multiply it. And so let's save it and let's multiply it. And life insurance for me, like the epiphany was that in the saving, it's in the middle between you save money and you multiply it. It's like that middle ground. And we could go into it if you'd like. That was like, for me, I was like, oh, insurance is not an investment. It's just a better place to save your money. And like for me, that's why I call it the and asset, because I'm obsessed with giving dollars more than one job. But it's not like you have to understand it from a framework standpoint. That's why it's important to me to walk through the steps, because if you don't have it's just important to understand that it's a tool, just like everything, just like franchises, just like real estate. It's a tool, but you need an overarching framework and how you view money in your life.
It's complicated to understand it when someone first hears about it. It's not like they just don't get it right away. And I know that because I have not done it yet. I'm thinking about doing it. I'm going to talk to you about doing it for my kids right now, because they're getting paid a wage. Some of it's going into a Roth, but then there's left over. And I think a whole life policy for the kids makes a lot of sense right now. So I want to get your opinion on that. But we talk about it in the mastermind. So people start to look at whole life and using it more than just insurance. And there's still a lot of confusion around it. So for all the listeners, how do you start to break down like what is whole life?
So I'm going to break this down in two ways. So I'm going to first talk about I'm not going to talk about life insurance. I'm going to talk about a high yield savings account, and then I'm going to replace it with life insurance, and then we'll talk about why life insurance, and we'll break that down. So if I was to draw you a picture, I would draw a stick figure, and then I would draw a dollar sign next to that stick figure. So you representing you making money. Your money's got to go somewhere. We're now assuming you're going to save and invest your money. So that person number one takes their money, puts it into a savings account, earns some interest, and then uses that money to invest in a franchise, into a real estate property, into a Roth IRA. Like, it doesn't really matter, but you can see like they have that money, and then you just draw an arrow to where they're putting that money. So the savings account is the thing is the middle man between making the money and deploying the money. Okay. Person number two does the exact same thing, makes the money. Instead of taking that exact dollar, putting into a checking account or a savings account, and then deploying it into an investment, they're funding an insurance policy. Okay. Short-term disadvantages to that insurance policy is they don't have all the money that they've put in immediately. So that's the benefit of a savings account. You have all your money immediately, and so like that's a benefit. So the disadvantage to a life insurance policy is you might put in money and you have like 85 or 90% available, not a full 100%.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisor and you're frustrated that you're not awarding as many franchises as you thought you would, this is the reason I created the Franchisor Mastermind. If you want access to the information, the techniques that the best franchise sales organizations are using to award franchises, and you want what mature brands have with their playbook of having happy, successful franchisees that grow the right way, then you might want to check out the Franchisor Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections. They want the playbook to achieve both short-term and long-term success. They want to increase enterprise value in their brand. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
When is that available?
Immediately.
Okay.
Immediately. And over time, after about 4, 5, or 6 years, you actually have more money than what you've put in. So it's not like a long-term disadvantage. It's just in the short term. The benefits, though, is when a life insurance policy is set up and used properly, which we can talk about in a second, it will literally grow the rest of your life. You never have to worry about it losing money. It will grow with tax. It's like a Roth. It grows tax-deferred, and you can use it tax-free, and then the death benefit gets paid on income tax-free. You have a death benefit that continues to grow. There's privacy benefits. It's safe. And so when you start stacking in all the benefits of an insurance policy, I'm not going to say that a life insurance policy gets you 7, 8, 9, 10%, because it doesn't in the internal rate of return.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at all the other benefits, you really have to earn about 9 to 11% every single year to just compare to all the benefits that life insurance is giving you, not just now, but in the future. So with that reality, if like, and the epiphany I had was there's a lot of people selling insurance and they're selling it for future. They're saying, Erik, you're not going to see this for the next 30 years, but you'll thank me 30 years from now because of all these benefits. And then there's other people that could care less about those benefits. They're just saying, you should infinite bank with your life insurance policy. You put your money in and you use it as a savings account. You get all these benefits. And I just realized, like, oh, can't you have both? Like, is it possible that I could have control and access to my money now and also get all the benefits over here? Why don't we marry them together? And so for me, the difference between that person 1 versus person 2 is that person 2 is for the first few years is going to have a little bit less money than person number 1. But they are literally setting themselves up with an amazing financial foundation that not just protects them, but gives them better growth, control, privacy, tax benefits, and gives them the control and liquidity to do whatever they wanted to do. That's why the book is called The And Asset, is give your dollars more than one job. You can have all the benefits of insurance over here and invest in a franchise, real estate, the market, Bitcoin, toilet paper, whatever you want to invest in. We don't judge. And so that's the difference, and those are the pros and cons. And then we can, if you would like, if you have another question, I think it's also important to know, like, not all insurance is created equal. There's a lot of people that say negative things about insurance, rightfully so. We can talk about that. But I want to just pause and see if you have a follow-up question.
So the term, when someone's like, hey, I don't like this because it's infinite banking. Does infinite banking have a negative connotation to you?
Infinite banking has a negative connotation because there's a bunch of people on TikTok that are saying all kinds of crazy stuff that is just not true, and it gives everybody a bad name. And then there's people on there that are saying what they want to say and then selling you a crappy product. It's an example of talking about franchises as this amazing thing and then selling someone a terrible franchise. It's not necessarily that franchising is the issue. It was that transaction or person or opportunity that maybe was the issue. So same thing with insurance.
So you don't think it's smart, set up a whole life or the policy and then use it as a savings account, go buy groceries and go do that. That's
not number one. Insurance companies hate that. We call liquidity and control. You have the ability to use your money anytime, but if you're using it every 2 weeks, the insurance companies are not meant for that. There's actually ways around that to do like third-party lending, but if you were talking to me and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to put a bunch of my money in and then pay my groceries and light bills, and I would say, don't do it, because it's actually not a short-term arbitrage. The big mistake that people make is they think infinite banking is like arbitraging their money. Like, I'm putting money over here, I'm getting 6%, and then I'm using it at 5%. I'm getting a 1% credit on spending money. That's not true. That maybe in like 40 years, you could look back and say, like, okay, over that 40-year time period, I get a 1%. you know how irresponsible that would be to like pitch you on that now? Not only would the insurance companies not appreciate that, it's just not true. And there's people out there though that are saying that. There's people out there that are saying you're going to earn 7 and you only pay 5. So any smart person would be like, sign me up. And then when they realize that's not true, it gets a bad taste in their mouth, even though I can say that the insurance is giving you value of easily 7, 8, 9, 10%. It's just not going to all show up in an IRR. Because there's I think of it as like a cell phone. This is an iPhone. There's a lot of jobs that the iPhone does for me. I don't know what rate of return this gives me, but it's essential to the way I live my life. I almost think of life insurance as not as an investment, as just an essential foundation to save and use my money. And so I'll get off my high horse.
Well, you were going to say something before you're talking about, so I think you're going to talk about some of the disadvantages.
Yeah. So, I mean, when people say cons, and it's really important to me that you lay out, like, what are the cons to putting money into a life insurance policy when set up and used properly? The con number 1 is you don't have all your money overnight. It takes about 3, 4, maybe 5 years to have the money that you've put in. And so, again, when people put their money in 401ks and other assets, they're not requiring 100% liquidity. And so most people are actually okay with that, but it's important to note that. The second con is from a health perspective, not everyone may qualify. You might not be healthy enough, or you might be like 90 years old, and it just might be like you might not be able to qualify for it. There's ways around that. So like, let's say you were not healthy, you couldn't get insurance. You could actually still own the insurance policy. You could still control the insurance policy and all the cash. You just have to insure someone else, your spouse, your kids, business partners. So there's ways around that, but not everyone that's maybe listening to this or watching this could even qualify. And then the third aspect is you don't get a deduction going in. Insurance, when set up and used properly, is one of the greatest tax, I wouldn't even say loopholes, but it's one of the best tax advantages in the tax code, because once money is in, it works like a Roth. It grows tax deferred. You can use capital tax free, and your money gets passed on income tax free. So it's like, that's what the wealthy families are doing, and then they're using trust to even make it even better. But you don't get a deduction going in, and so that's not really a disadvantage because of what you understand on the back end. But some people all they care about is I want to find a deduction, and so if it doesn't give you a deduction today, then you kind of write it off. And so those would be like the 3 disadvantages to a life insurance policy. And then the other big disadvantage is if you don't set it up or use it properly, which I bet you 95% of these things aren't, then everything that I said could go out the window. You want to make sure you're working with the right insurance company that's a mutual, solid company. But then more importantly, life insurance is just a contract between you and that insurance company, and not all contracts are created equal, as you know. And so you want to make sure that contract is designed for flexibility, high cash value. Like, you want to make sure that it's best designed for you. And the irony is that what's best for you, actually, as an agent, you get paid the least. So we built
interesting. Go into that, dive into that, because I think this is where a lot of people that you need to have somebody that you trust.
Right.
Justin, Don, and I talked to a lot of different people, and a lot of people want to talk to our mastermind members about this, and we don't let them in. You're getting ready to talk to our mastermind members. So, but go into that.
Yeah. So within any life insurance contract, there's really 3 moving pieces. If you're really, really technical watching this, there's more, but we're just going to talk about 3 moving pieces. There's a base in a premium, there's a PUA in a premium, and then there's a term rider in a premium. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the base, let's just take a very simple example. Let's take you're putting $10,000 a year into a life insurance policy. Let's say the base is $3,000. Let's say the PUA rider is $6,000 and the term rider is $1,000. Okay, now the base over time builds long-term cash value, but in the short first year, second year doesn't give you a ton of cash value. But it's also what we get paid in commission is mainly around the base insurance premium. The PUA creates an initial cash, but if you put too much PUA in and too little base, then your life insurance policy loses the tax benefits. So you need to balance that, and so that's where the term rider can come in to cheaply balance that. And so I just gave you a basic example. What we try to do is, in a lot of cases, make the base as small as possible. So in some cases, we can make the base like 10%, and then the PUA and term rider 90%. What we are essentially doing is we're cutting what we could be making by 90%. But I don't necessarily look at that way, because most people wouldn't work with us if we were doing the typical way. Where I have problems is when people say all the right things and then still sell you something that's mediocre. That's happening a lot. And so the call to action is, if you're listening to this and have a life insurance policy, someone on our team can look at it. Because that's a common question we get, is like, hey, I was sold an insurance policy 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or just, and we would be able to tell almost immediately how it was set up. And there's ways of improving it after the fact if it wasn't set up optimally.
One of the disadvantages that I've heard from people is they are making really good money this year, next year, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, their income just dropped in half.
Yep.
Does that and they're not able to keep up with the payments that they originally thought they could.
So two ways around that. Way number one is you can do what's called a front load in an insurance policy. And so if you're sitting on a lot of good money, but you just don't know what the future looks like, you can heavily pay in the first year, crazy ton of money, and then ongoing the payments could be, or the premiums could be way smaller, just from a hedge standpoint. With even in those smaller premiums, let's say $10,000 is the number, whatever your base is the required premium. So in the example is, let's say you have $100,000 today, and then ongoing we want to put $10,000 in. You put $100,000 today, you have $90,000 of cash value available. Next year comes around, and you are like, okay, I'm having a bad year. We need to pay the base. Now the base, let's say for this example, is $3,000. So do you have $3,000? If the answer is no, then we just look to the insurance policy and say, could we take $3,000 from the insurance policy? The technical word would be, could I borrow against my $90,000 and get $3,000, which I have available to do and be able to fund. Where people get where people get, I would say, in a pickle is if they fully leverage all their money on a life insurance policy, and then they're not able to make the minimum payment. That becomes a problem. But that's why flexibility is super, super key on not just the front end, but on the back end. And then the worst case scenario in most cases is you just lose your policy. There's not like some magical like debt that you have to pay. It's the example of like, if you put a bunch of money in a savings account, you make a bad investment, you lose it. It's not like the bank is now going to send you an invoice. You just lost your money, what you put in. And so there are cases where if you had extra, if your interest was above what your basis, you may have to pay a little bit of tax on the interest above basis. But overall, like worst case scenario is not as bad as maybe some people think it is when we're talking about taking loans against your policy. It's essentially just a more efficient way to use your own money.
So who's kind of the ideal person to be doing this right now?
Yeah.
And what do they do with that money?
Yeah. So great question. An ideal person is someone who's can save at least $10,000 or more. On average, we have people putting in over $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 because this is money that would be going into a savings account or checking, and they're just redirecting into an account. A lot of people on the front end will do a first year dump in to start their policy with a lot of cash and then do something like 10, 20, 30,000. So
that's a lot of cash. So first year they're doing $10,000 a year.
Yeah, like 100,000 or 150,000 going in the first year, and then payments from a cash is like you might be sitting on capital, but then you want to make sure that you can sustain it with easy cash flow. So what I just said is if you need $10,000 a year or more, I just wiped out 95% of the population. Mm-hmm. Like if you're listening to this and can save $10,000 or more into anything, you're winning in life. And I say that since like great job. But that's where I'm very empathetic to the amount of people that this wouldn't be right for are just people that need to make more money. Yeah. So it's like make money, save that money, and then how should you use it? I would go back to where's the best. What do you believe is your best investment? A lot of our clients are investing in their business or investing in things that make them more valuable. That's number one. We have a lot of clients that do real estate syndications and real estate investing, and then we have some clients that do more speculative.
What would you consider more speculative?
Like crypto and day trading and angel investing. And by the way, I have some angel investments, not investment advice, but so I have some of those things, but the foundation of my entire portfolio is built around life insurance and safety. And then I am deploying a lot of capital into business to operate that, because for me, BetterWealth.com is the business that's keeping the lights on. And then I'm starting to look at some other asset classes, but I want to make sure that I personally have, a year's worth of reserve in any business operation I get into, so that I never have to cut a corner. So that's how I view my investments and how I look at life insurance.
So a lot of franchisors their kids are on payroll.
Yep.
Is this, and you're funding the Roth, or at least we fund
that's
the
right.
Roth, and they're getting a nice building up a nice savings there. But what would you recommend for like a 10-year-old or 12-year-old kid for their parents to help them out with?
So
life insurance?
I have a baby girl, and she already has a life insurance policy on, and we're funding it after tax dollars. The moment she can start making income, that's going to be better, because
she's crawling right now.
She's crawling right now. She's cute, so maybe we could do a little bit of modeling, but you can't abuse that. So the reality is, I wouldn't be able to do a Roth for her because she needs to earn income, but life insurance, there's not that stipulation. And so the moment that she can start making income, obviously that's going to be better, because I can take money in my higher tax bracket and pay her in a lower tax bracket or a zero tax bracket, and then she can fund anything, whether it's a Roth or life insurance. Pros between, if I was looking at life insurance versus Roth, I like both. I'm a fan of both. The difference is I look at Roth as a wrapper to invest. So hear me out. I see you make money, checking account, Roth. So there's a world where life insurance and a Roth could be in the same strategy. Fund a life insurance policy, and then potentially put that money into a Roth if you wanted to go that crazy, as long as you have the earned income to make that possible. Or you have a first world problem of you can only put so much money into a Roth IRA. So after you've maxed out your Roth, there's life insurance. My point is, it doesn't necessarily need to be an either or. It can be an and I am a huge fan of a Roth because it's just a tax wrapper. And I view life insurance and Roth as a 1-2 punch, just because a Roth would be the go-to investment versus maximize a Roth and then you can put your money elsewhere. But insurance is still going to be where my first dollars go.
So what would you fund that first? Let's say, someone's, under 10. How much would you fund that right away? Would you still front load it a lot, or is that not as important?
Yeah, not as important. And the problem that we face with kids is we look to their parents, and you can't have, if I only have $1 million of death benefit on me, then my baby can only have half of that, essentially. Okay. So they don't want to create this weird incentive where your kids are loading up with it. It's messed up, but it's true. And a lot of kids don't have income to prove, so your value is really tied to your parents. So the big actually problem with kids is sometimes they're so young that you can a $5,000 or $10,000 premium on a 1-year-old gets a lot of death benefit, because their chances of dying are insanely low for 80 years kind of deal. And so that the bigger problem is we have people that want to put a ton of money, but the death benefit is so high for the kids that we need to make sure that the parents and have twice that. And so it's just a balancing act. I like to make sure that the parents are maximized first, because I think of the waterfall effect. You're most likely going to die before your kids. Your kids are going to see that money. And so a perfect example is, you get life insurance, you load up on life insurance, your kids load up on life insurance, and then your grandchildren have life insurance. And then every generation, when they die, your money's got to go somewhere. If your kids are banking with their life insurance, they might have outstanding loans. Well, when you're dead, death money comes down that could repay back the loans. And so that's inner family banking. And especially if you set up a trust with that could be helpful. I don't know if I answer your question or not, but there's I guess it's different for each person, but typically people are putting $5,000 to $10,000 a year for their kids if they're able, if that's a possibility for them to be able to do.
You have a bunch of free resources. We'll link into franchisesecrets.com/wealth. Yeah. But what kind of resources do you have for the listeners?
I mean, we're obsessed with helping people understand this. So we have a calculator, we have case studies, we have interviews. For those that really go down that rabbit hole, the author of Becoming Your Own Banker, his name's R. Nelson Nash. He's no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago. Had the opportunity to meet him and learn from him on my journey, and I've interviewed him. So we have expert interviews, we have a full course, I've written a book, and we have access to a couple other people's books. our friend Garrett Gunderson, What Would the Rockefellers Do? I wrote the foreword to that. And so we have that, the and asset. And then if you have a life insurance policy that you want us to review, or if you just have questions, you're like, hey, I want to talk to someone about what this could look like. We also give you access to be able to talk to anyone on our team, or even set up a time to look at your own numbers. So all of what I shared is available for your audience. And if they go to
franchisesecrets.com/wealth.
Yeah, they can access all that.
That's awesome. So if someone's, they listen to this, they get excited, like, I want to do this. And they go talk to their friend that says, you are an idiot.
Yeah.
That's like the worst thing that you can do. Like, what would you say to
Yeah.
that person?
I would, number one, validate their friend. Their friends are not crazy. Their friends are actually very rational. And when you look at the stat that I just gave you is kind of made up. 95%. I don't know. I want to be polite to our industry, but I've seen more bad life insurance than good. And so just because I'm a fan of insurance, I've seen people use my books, my content, my videos, and then peddle trash. And it's unfortunate. And so I would say that be very careful. And you want to make sure you're working with a great insurance company. There's probably 10. There's a lot more than 10 insurance companies out there. There's probably 10 that you should only work with. And then when it comes to structuring, it is worth talking to our team or somebody that's a real expert at this, because there's a crazy difference between someone that has their license and sells insurance versus someone that's really becomes an expert at what we call overfunding or max funding insurance. And so they're not crazy. The Dave Ramsey's of the world have valid points. I just think they're viewing it as an investment. And of course, I would never invest in insurance. We know way better investments than insurance. So that's a big misnomer. And then the second misnomer is it's usually really poorly designed. But if you have it properly designed and you don't look at it as an investment, but as a foundational safe place to save, protect, use your money, there's really no downside to it. If you can wait a couple of years, because some people need all their money immediately. And number one, I don't think they're going to be successful long term with that attitude. But number two, this is not going to be a great strategy for them, because it's never going to move cryptocurrency speed. And sometimes that's a deal breaker for people.
One of the things I appreciate about you is your honesty, and you're open about things that I'm assuming others are probably not open about in your industry. In franchising, I'm very clear about what's great and what's not so great about franchising. You mentioned commissions, and you kind of broke that down. How many people in the life insurance game are talking about commissions like that?
Not a lot. And I think it would be really interesting. I'm not a pro, we need more regulation. I'm usually, let's have less regulation, because I see regulators as getting in the way. It would be really interesting though, if you had to disclose it. And so we're very open about how we get paid. And it's like the money's got to go somewhere. If the agent's getting a bunch of money, that's most likely going to mean your policies are maybe a little bit more less designed. And all we do is, it's not like the insurance company's they're making the same. It's just the money that we're not getting, it's passed on to the policyholder by having a more optimized policy. But selfishly, more people should do that, because we get a lot more clients.
Yeah.
I mean, we have clients in all 50 states, and we have people that are flocking to us because, I was at a conference the other day, and there was somebody that came to us, and he's like, my person gave me all the right books. I think this person even shared a video that I had. He's all excited. We looked at his policy, and then we compared what he could have done if he worked with us. $1.4 million difference.
At the end.
After 40 years.
After 40 years.
$1.4 million difference.
Because his agent took up too much commission on the front.
His agent either that or just didn't optimally design. Over time, little non-optimizers add up. They compound. And I don't know, $1.4 million, it moves the needle. And that's just that's the difference of working with one person versus the other. Now we were able to help that person, and so they weren't able to recapture all of that, but they talked to us in the first couple of years. But that's just an example of that's where I can't just be I can't have the flag on the industry, because it's sometimes I'm more critical on our industry than maybe people would like me to be, but we have to be honest, because we lose a lot of credibility if we're just all of it's good. No, there's a lot of people that I would not endorse, and I would have caution you and just be aware. And so
Well,
Yeah.
I love when I'm investing money in vehicles that are growing that money tax free, and this is one way to do it. Anything else that you want to tell the listeners before I let you go?
No, I number one, appreciate you having me on your show. Love what you're up to. And I think that this goes so well with what you're teaching, because we're just showing someone how to save and protect and create a foundation. But then you got to multiply your wealth. You got to grow. And then how are you going to do that? It's through things like buying franchises, or you really have to ask yourself, where is my money and time going to be best maximized? Insurance is not the solution for that. It's the foundation, but then ultimately answer that question. That 1-2 punch is going to be incredible. And then just selfishly, like, none of this matters if you're not living intentionally. So really get, like, if you don't know how do I define an intentional life, stop everything that you're doing and do that, because it would be a shame for you to go year after year after year with not that clarity. I believe that clarity creates a lot of conviction. And I believe conviction is one of the greatest things you can have in your life. And so it's been a pleasure, Erik.
No, we're not done.
Okay, great. Okay. I thought we were landing the plane.
We were. But what's your intentional life?
So I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and so my intentional life is living a life well lived, where Jesus says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." It was interesting. We were in an Uber today, and we asked about wisdom, and the person, our Uber driver, said it all comes down to love. And I think of the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love people. And so an intentional life is for me to model that with my family, but then also create business and other areas. I want to be a multiplier. I want to be a plus. And ultimately, I want that to reflect on Jesus, but I ultimately want to be a value add and a life-giving person to the people that I interact with, because that's why we were put on this earth. That's why I believe we were put on this earth, is to interact with people. And I want everyone to walk away and be like, I have a more energized perspective on life because I interacted with Caleb. That's not like a bullet point intentional life, but like those are all the ingredients of like, what does an intentional life look like for me? And if I have multiple days that aren't lined up with that, I need to change something.
Last question.
Yep.
How do you add value to people? Like,
Yep.
if it's someone random, if it's friends, like on a daily, schedule, like how do you intentionally think about adding value to people?
Yeah, that's a great
'Cause
question.
I know you do a great job at it.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a framework question, and then I'm going to give you maybe a more emotional. So how is value created? Value is really, if we boil down what is value, you can give a service or a product. So if I look at like, how can we actually provide value to the world, it's either comes in via service or product. Not all services or products are created equal. And so if I were to like reverse engineer, like if someone's like, how can I get into business or create value? Because I'll say things like money follows value. Okay, what is that? What does that mean? Well, I will either exchange currency, money, for a service that I value more than my money. And so I would like look around and figure out what that is. And then, or I'll exchange currency or money for a product that I value more than my money. And so within that, if we go deeper, and this is more my emotional thing, is I believe that you are your greatest asset. Your ability to think and show up is like the greatest asset, and I think a lot of people are undermining it. And so I ask, what can I do that can encourage them to have more energy and to smile? Because most of the time, people that are happier make more money and have more clarity and are more confident. And so what I try to do is use words of encouragement to either speak life into somebody, or maybe it's really clear, like, man, you're really gifted here, and you might be so close to it that you're not seeing it. So if you had to ask me like the highest leverage way that I can add value to someone is encourage them or give them an unlock that allows them to be a greater producer, because that on a balance sheet maybe won't show up, but that is going to be the way that they provide greater value in the world. So if I could just be a sage and just encourage people or unlock people's ability to create value, like, man, I'm doing incredible things in this world. And I would imagine people would want to be around me because they're encouraged or they're getting insight and clarity around their life that ultimately helps them. But we have to realize when you help someone else create more, like they're making the world a better place. So you can really become an amplifier if you can be that for other people.
Well, you've definitely been that for me. I appreciate your friendship. How do people find you? Like what and you're on YouTube, you're everywhere, but like what's the best way?
So we, because of our friendship and partnership, we've given all of our resources to your listeners down below. So it's
Franchise Secrets /wealth.
Okay. They go there, they get access to all of our resources. That would probably be the best call to action. We're on YouTube. So if you look at BetterWealth, and we also have And Asset on YouTube. We have 2 channels. And so if you're like, man, I want to learn more, you can go down the rabbit hole on YouTube. And then we also have betterwealth.com. But again, the landing page that you have down below is going to be the best because we've created all those resources. And if there's something that you're like, I want to actually talk to somebody, we actually have a link for you to connect directly with us. And we know that they came from your community. So we're going to make sure that we take good care of them.
Well, man, thanks for letting me use your mics, your cameras, and I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.